Welcome back to the Hard Skills Show, where we take a deep dive into the most challenging soft skills required to navigate leadership uncertainty, complexities, and change today and into the future. I'm your host, Dr. Mira Broncoot, psychologist, leadership consultant, and founder of TowerScope. And I am super excited to talk with today's guest. We will be talking about 7 great mistakes leaders make and how to avoid them. Now, this podcast episode is the first time these research findings are being shared in public. They're preliminary, but still, we're getting the scoop. We're going to get access to insider secrets from 1,000 executive coaches. So, whether you're a leader managing a team, a coach, or simply trying to support your colleagues, this conversation is for you. Now, before we get started, I do have a few quick announcements. First, we have moved up in ranking from last year and are now officially moved from the top 10% to the top 5% of all podcasts globally. Woo woo! Very, very exciting. Second, a reminder that our workshop, Redefining and Developing Your Leadership Identity in 2025, is coming up on May 21st. The workshop includes a leadership assessment and several tools to help you explore how to apply your leadership style and identity to current leadership decisions, transitions, and people management. Right now, it's only open by private invitation to my newsletter subscribers, who will get a special preferred subscriber price if they register by this Friday, April 18th. You can hop on my newsletter before then to receive that access, or you can wait until I announce it publicly. We're going to be reflecting on questions such as, how do I show up as a leader right now? Who must I become to live up to this moment? What have I overcome that has made me more resilient and effective as a leader? And what must I still overcome? Which strengths could best help me navigate current leadership challenges, which might get in the way? And is it okay to show up for my team as my authentic self while my authentic self right now is exhausted, worried, and stressed? Would it be more helpful to my team if I don't show up fully authentic like that? These are really difficult challenges and questions that I'm hearing all the time. That's why I'm holding this workshop. They are questions of identity at a time when most of us are asking this of ourselves. And this workshop can quickly provide some clarity so you don't have to feel so overwhelmed or stuck in your leadership next steps. Okay, with that announcement, let me introduce our guest, Ryan O. Underhill, PhD, PCC. He is an industry recognized pioneer in the global emergence of the executive coaching field. He's a thought leader, a keynote speaker, and author of 3 books and numerous white papers and articles. In 2024, Thinkers 50 named him among the top thinkers in coaching. That is a huge honor. He's the founder and CEO of CoachSource, the world's largest pure play, we'll find out what that is in a second, pure play executive coaching firm with 1,200 coaches worldwide. He resides in Silicon Valley with his wife, Julie, 4 grown kids, and a lovable Labrador. With me today, I also have his book, Coach Me, Your Personal Brand, Personal Board of Directors. And maybe we'll have a chance to pull some from that book as well. So welcome on the show, Brian.
Thank you. So great to be here. Thanks for having me. And hopefully I'll see that book in your bookshelf behind you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to add it. Okay,
Virtually added.
let's start with the first question I mentioned, pure play executive coaching firm. What does that mean, pure play?
Sure thing. So pure play meaning that executive coaching is the focus of the business. So we don't really do coaching below executive level. We don't really do other services beyond coaching. We don't have a search business or a different kind of consulting business. So executive coaching is all we do, and 1,200 coaches around the world, that's a very large number.
I was just going to say, if executive coaching is the only thing you focus on, and you have 1,200 coaches, you must be onto something. That must mean there's a need, there's a desire among executives for this level of coaching, right?
Absolutely, for sure. And this started, probably 25 years ago when I would notice that clients would ask for more and more specialties of coaches or coaches in certain parts of the world
Mhm.
who spoke certain languages. And so it started to become obvious that just, here's our stable of 40 was not going to serve our multinational corporations, but instead, let's have a vetted, curated network, a large one in multiple countries that would have a better, we'd be able to meet our corporate clients' needs much better that way.
Yeah, and I was going to say, 25 years ago, that was well before coaching was cool, and it was well before coaching was even, I think, like shared publicly. Like that was before people said, I have a coach. And they kept it kind of a secret back then. So I'm curious, like, how did you how did you know this was kind of the next big trend or need, right? And as you were building this company, what was the vision and why?
Yeah, and I'm not sure anyone really truly knows kind of, the next hot thing. In HR too, there's a lot of trends that come and go and I can't honestly say, oh, I knew this would be huge in the next 10, 20, 30
Oh,
years.
come on, own it, Brian.
I wish I had that kind of
I know, right?
foresight. It was always that's the optimistic side, the pessimistic, realistic side was more about, geez, is this a fad? But obviously it's not. And so, when we first started, so I started to work for Marshall Goldsmith, a well-known coach, still a good friend of mine. He gave me my start, as it were. I was in graduate school and he was doing 360 feedback debriefs by the thousands, tens of thousands when I arrived. So he'd go teach an amazing leadership course, and then a bunch of us coaches would debrief the 360 tool with each leader one to one, a 1 hour coaching session. And then the clients just wanted more of that. They like, oh, I love that one session you did. Can we do more than the one session? Can we do a few sessions? Can we do several months? Can we do? And eventually it started to become 6 and honestly 1 year assignments. And there wasn't, I mean, the ICF started in 94. I'm referring to a period right now, 98, 99, something like that. And we didn't know about ICF. There was not many coaching schools yet. We were just making up a methodology, honestly. I mean, we were just following Marshall's wisdom and coming up with some things, and it was just coming out of the sky to create a coaching methodology. I remember the first time I was given a 1 year assignment after doing just 1 hour assignments, and I had to go to a colleague and go, what are we going to do with this person for 1 year? There wasn't a lot out there yet to base the work upon. Thankfully, by now, that's been mostly all worked through, of course, as the industry has matured.
Yeah, yeah. And as you started doing these 1 year assignments, what did you learn about what leaders wanted more of, or even what they needed and didn't know that they needed?
Mm-mm. Well, it was interesting too because leaders didn't always know what this coaching thing was. So a lot of times they would be given coaching. Now, we were mostly past the you're in trouble, so here's your coach on your way out. So we're mostly past that. But it wouldn't be uncommon for, I remember a telecom company and the SVP had a coach with Marshall, and then her 8 direct reports had one of us as coaches as well. So she gave a coach to each person, but they didn't always understand what this coaching thing was. And to some extent, leaders even today may not always understand what it was. So, what it is and how it could help them. So there was a certain amount of education about what the role of coaching is and what we're there to do, what we're not there to do, how confidentiality works, and so forth. So there
Yeah,
was, and there still is today, I think, to the end leader who might hire a coach, some confusion about what a coach is there to help them to do exactly.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, um, I think people still confuse executive coaching with mentorship or business coaching or business strategy or, things like that. And it is still something that requires some education. Um, Now I'm wondering, we're going to talk about the 7 great mistakes today, right? Um, how did you come to pull this information and to identify this list in the first place?
The list of the 7.
Yeah,
And of course, it has to be 7 because there's
yeah,
something magical, right?
of
Something
course.
magical, a biblical
Can't have
proportion when
6.
we're
That
talking.
feels awkward.
Yes, exactly. So it's a bit of art, a bit of science. So for the science part at my firm, CoachSource, we're always collecting what are the themes that leaders are working on with their coaches. And now and then we'll do a blog piece or a publication on what leaders are working on most commonly. So that's more of the science part. And then in between that, maybe is with 1,000 coaches, I usually have a pretty regular read on what coaches are up to anecdotally
Mhm.
and some of the crazy stories that we all hear now and then. Um, Sworn to secrecy, of course, anonymizing names and all of that. But yeah, there's some pretty interesting things we hear out there about what leaders are up to, and some of them are mega career killers, honestly, if not addressed, and can
Yeah,
really harm someone's career and can really do a lot of harm to the organization if not addressed. And then the third source is myself, having coached for 25 plus years, seeing it myself. There's certain areas of development that leaders can make fast progress and make improvement, and others that take a lot of work. But there are certain areas that, if not addressed, again, can have major consequences in all kinds of ways, from success of the organization, the engagement of people working there, people working around this leader's own mental health and work-life balance. All kinds of effects can happen when some of these areas are not addressed.
yeah, yeah. And um, we're reaching an ad break, so I'm not going to ask you the hard question just yet, which is tell me all about the 7. Um, but I do want us to learn a little bit about, like, when did you collect the information, and, like, were there specific industries that you were sort of most curious about, or did you collect across certain industries?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's the mixture of the last time we looked at more scientifically from corporations was, I want to say, mid last year. It was mid last year when we last looked at it, and we have a blog piece on that.
Mm.
Um, of course, talking to coaches just happens over all of these years, as does my own experience as an executive coach as well. Um, but we know the world has changed a lot in the last 5 years or so, and it feels like it's constantly changing. So I expect some of what we're talking about now might be different in the next few years. And maybe it's different now than it might have been 10 years ago. Or maybe not. Some of these are kind of classics, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's your caveat, everybody, that we know these things change, and so we are sharing it at this point in time, April 15th, 2025.
That's, mhm.
Okay, so we are nearing that ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Brian Underhill, author of Coach Me, your personal brand of I keep calling it personal board of directors. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. At this time, if you're listening to us right now, you can find us live streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, several other locations at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Brian Underhill of CoachSource. So, drum roll, please. We are going to get into the 7 great mistakes that leaders make, with the caveat that these are preliminary and they're still looking at the data and everything can change in the course of a week. But some of these are indeed timeless, and you're getting to hear them today for the first time. So let's start with the first. What is the first?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. There we go.
Yeah.
Rookie mistake. For fun, I actually will start off by telling you the 7th. Why not? Go in reverse. It doesn't have to be reverse order, but
yes,
it's a fun story that many leaders make, and it can be very critical to a company's future if this one is not done correctly, and we're all subject to it, by the way. So we're going to go back into the early 2000s, and if you could possibly remember what your cell phone looked like then, you very likely had one of those Nokias with the snake game on it. Okay, so that should help everyone remember what we looked like back then. And I was coaching at a company here in Silicon Valley where I live, with a head of R&D. And in his particular company, they were among the first to start to develop a camera for the cell phone. And I remember him telling me about this. It's the first time I'd ever heard of it.
wow.
That, oh yeah, we're working on this technology and it will eventually enable cameras on cell phones. And I thought to myself, this is the stupidest idea I have ever heard. Who wants a camera on their cell phone? No one's going to use that. We have our digital cameras. And now, okay, remember, I'm a coach. I'm not there to judge this. So I didn't say anything. Okay, I want to make sure everyone knows that. That was not my job to evaluate that. In my head, I remember thinking, this is so, I can't believe they're wasting time on this. So we all know where that went, right? And in about, was it 2007, I happened to go to the conference in in San Francisco, where the iPhone was first revealed. And I remember seeing it up in this glimmering case and everyone running around and taking pictures of it. I think we know darn well what became of the future of cameras on cell phones. And that is mistake number 7, which is honestly not properly anticipating the future because your current knowledge gets in the way. So one thing I didn't quite mention is I do have a lot of technical interest, and I did then. And I thought, as someone who knows something about technology, that this was a dumb idea and wouldn't go anywhere. That got in my way. I wasn't able to see an incredible future that we all now live in to this day. So imagine history is littered with companies that missed key milestones in the world. And you could go and look at case studies of times where leaders had all the information and made the wrong choice, a very bad, very painful, very expensive, and possibly bankrupting choice.
So interesting. Wow. And right. And now we have no cameras.
Yes, the cameras are gone.
So I'm really curious, how, if you have all of this knowledge, right, that it makes perfect sense that your instinct is going to be, you're going to rest on the vast knowledge that you bring to a position. So how do you override the liability, like the shadow side to that vast knowledge?
Yeah, and I think we're really susceptible to this. It takes actually being a lot more open than many of us are when new information comes in that's contradictory to what you already currently know. So that does take having people around you or near you or whatnot who are seeing things from different angles, welcoming those perspectives, even living with them. Some companies do future scenario planning, like what would the world look like if no one has a camera anymore, maybe whatever it might have been, to really be open to that possibility that there could be something bigger or different here than you're currently allowing yourself to see.
Yeah, and I can imagine the many other applications this has to society, to global peace. I mean, I love thinking about how you can apply, some of these skill sets that we talk about on the show. We say leadership skills, but really that also applies to like how we change as a society and grow as human beings, and that openness to differences and different opinions and different perspectives is something that humans fight so hard against, and yet we desperately need to be leaning towards. So I appreciate that you started with that. I would have known that was number 7, by the way, Brian. It could have been number 1.
It could, certainly can. Yeah. As I said, that this is all a bit new, so we can mess the numbers around still. We
You
have time
can.
for that.
No one will judge you if you start moving these numbers around.
Exactly.
All right. Well, do you want to go backwards from there, number 6?
Sure.
Or it could be number 3. I won't know.
Oh, let me just go forward from here. Why not? Let's start at 1.
All right.
And so number 1 actually has an interesting relation to 7 in sort of a way. Now, lots of research in leadership will often find that the most critical aspect of being a good leader is self-awareness. And I couldn't quote this very second. I'm sure it was CCL or other organizations that have found that over the years. It's self-awareness and knowing yourself. And that's a lot of what we do in coaching, right? We gather feedback. We collect that feedback anonymously. We share it with the leader. And maybe all of us have been in situations with a leader who this is a serious shock to that person. And that's okay. That's why we're there, to help them think about it, help them integrate it. If for someone listening has not done anything in the feedback department, of course, I'd say you should try it, but I'll also say there will be amazing surprises in a good way about yourself that you never knew. And there will be maybe some stinging things as well about you on the negative side. But imagine not knowing that. Imagine going your whole life never looking in a mirror, not knowing how you're coming across to others. And so a lack of self-awareness can be a major career killer, not just for leaders, but anyone in an organization. And I think we've all worked with those people now and then. I'm sure we've had to deal with them in the past.
Yeah, and not just them, as if it's like not us too, right? Like we're included in that. I think there's some statistic out there, like 85% of us think that we're self-aware and only 15% of us are actually fully self-aware of how we're coming across or something like that.
Yeah. It's something, well, I don't know if this is the right number, but I think studies on people thinking are if they're a better than average driver in their car or a worse than average driver. They've just asked this in a room of people, and 85% of them will have their hands up that they are better than average. And so we know that we can be delusional about how good we really are at things.
And we all complain about all the other bad drivers out there.
It's all them, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
I do think that, saying that sometimes, because it seems like such common sense, people overlook the work that it takes to continuously self-develop over time. And, just because you become quote unquote self-aware at one point in time with one role does not mean that's the end of it, because every time you are put into a new challenge you haven't faced before, you do need to re-engage in that self-awareness, exploration to see what else did you not know about yourself until you got to this situation or role or position to have to face this new thing.
Absolutely true. And not just a 360 or interviews by a coach, but there's lots of psychometric personality assessments and so forth that are really insightful. My wife laughs at me because anytime that one of these comes out, someone will encourage me to take it, because we'll allow 1,000 coaches, these things come to me, hey, here's this new tool about this and that, and I'll take it. And my wife is like, why do you keep taking these things? Don't you know yourself already?
No,
I
I
thought you
do
knew
too. I do too. I love taking those assessments and learning something new about myself. And then if I feel like, oh, this feels off, I will give it to my husband. I'll say, what do you think? Does that sound like me? And he'd be like, yeah.
It
Other
always
people can see
does.
things, right? The Johari window. Other people can sometimes see things about you that you don't see.
Precisely that. And my company will use one of these known assessments, and then we'll actually have it on every person here. And then when we're having some troubles, we can pull up both of those people and say, oh, okay, I see why this is happening. I totally get this now, kind of why you two are rubbing each other the wrong way, based on how you're wired. And let's talk about how we can make that better.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we have time to touch on one more before the break.
All right. So,
Drum roll, please.
drum roll, please. You saw Saving Private Ryan
I
and
did not.
entrance to that. Okay, well, it's a gory first 25 minutes as they come on the beach in D-Day, and there's bodies all over the place, dead bodies left behind everywhere.
Mm.
Well, there are leaders out there that are notorious for leaving dead bodies wherever they go.
Yes.
And maybe after the break, I'll tell you a really fascinating story about a leader I got to follow around who was doing this in the most amazing ways I'd ever seen.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, great. Let's leave people on the edge of their seat for that story. You are listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Brian Underhill, author of Coach Me, Your Personal Board of Directors.
You did it.
I did. We are on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Join us right now. And you can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, several other locations at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Brian Underhill. And we are learning about the 7 great mistakes that leaders make from lessons learned across 1,000 coaches, executive coaches from CoachSource. And we were starting to talk about, we talked about number 7 first, then number 1, then number 2. And with number 2, leaving dead bodies behind. Yes. You have an interesting story about this.
Yeah, well, and I bet you if you asked a lot of coaches, this is one of the more common areas that we're asked to help with, and it can be
Yes.
very severe. So imagine if you follow big time tennis, each of these tennis manufacturers has a really high level person that outfits all the famous pros with all their equipment. They're fitting them, making specialized rackets for them. And so they have a very close relationship, right? And one such company called me. They had someone like this who's well regarded, well known in the industry. And everyone knew him, all the famous people in the world. He'd been on the cover of magazines, and athletes, celebrities, everyone would come to him for this assistant. He was horrendous to people back at the office, is what I was told. The head of HR was telling me about this. He was really nasty, really toxic, just head way up in the clouds about how great he was. And he was too big to fail. Honestly, they more or less said that to me, like, we can't fire him. Like, he's just too, at least at the time, they thought that. So I joined him on tour because, someone's got to join him on tour, right? And see what it's like.
What a nice perk of the coaching.
Imagine that. He was actually he and I had a good relationship. He was cool with me, but I was trying to look for signs about how he is with his people. And the smallest thing happened that was really telling. They have like this trailer truck kind of thing with a lobby, and reps come in and out. And one of his employees was coming up the stairs holding all of these boxes and trying to get in a bunch of rackets and whatever. My guy is sitting right there on Facebook at the time. This is a long time ago, watching stuff on Facebook, and he looks up and sees his own direct report dying under all of the boxes, can't get the door open, trying to get in and so forth, and just looks right back down on his phone, gets right back to laughing at Facebook. Just something tiny like that says a lot about how he sees others and how he treats them or doesn't with respect. So even though it wasn't blatantly rude or anything like that, it spoke volumes. Imagine anyone surprised, maybe he was not too big to fail. The behavior got to the point where certain clients were seeing it. They let him go, and he's never been seen. Your career's over at a certain point. You can leave some dead bodies, maybe. At some point, most companies might decide, yeah, you're not too big to fail. We need to let you go. Enough is enough. And unfortunately, that was not a success story on my part. I regret that. But it's a great lesson, because I bet you we've all seen this. We've all seen famous leaders out there. I'm sure we can all name them, who were notorious about how they treated people, and talk about whether that was really effective or not as a leadership style. I think most of us would say it's not.
Yeah. And I bet, in order for a coach to be successful with that kind of person, but really with anybody, they have to want to change. They have to see the problem, right?
Yes.
And often when you're an exceptionally high performer, you don't see a problem. You only see your successes, and people, give you accolades and, monetary rewards and all kinds of things. But it sounds like in this situation, it almost came too late to salvage, right? Like he finally got the feedback that people were unhappy at a point where everyone, started removing their investment in him, and, too late. I'm curious, what do you see it takes for a leader not to get to that point if they have this liability? Is there something else that they could catch sooner? Is there a way to do that?
Well, sometimes they know it, honestly. That's just their de facto way of managing people. Sometimes people have tried to tell them this. Their boss should work with them on this, but doesn't always. And interestingly, this area can be very fixable. It can be severe, but it can be fixed extremely fast if the leader genuinely wants to change. And that's not always a guarantee. And I think was true in this gentleman's case. We've seen cases where a leader I thought was pretty hopelessly in bad shape, and within weeks, like HR called and said, "What are you feeding him? What drug are you giving him? He's like a different person. He's made so much improvement, so much change." So the willingness is just the biggest factor. By the way, with these folks, I bet you they're great with their clients most of the time, right? It's like,
Yes.
why can't you act like that with everyone else or here, around here? Just that alone will solve most of what we're talking about.
That's right. That's right. There's plenty of people that are better at managing up or managing well with clients and not managing their teams or things like that for sure. And they,
Yeah.
whether they realize it or not, right? Okay, let's move on to number 3.
Well, the opposite of that, it's really funny. So I think most leaders, when we do their feedback, we're told, not always, but we're told they're either too rough on people or they're way too soft and not
Yes.
assertive and not uh, holding people accountable. And that can
Yeah.
be very damaging too, especially to your high performers, top performers who see someone who's not being addressed, who's not performing as expected. And the boss is just too nice. It's just very hard for them to give feedback. And as coaches, we have to help them with that because they will look for all kinds of ways to not give feedback
Yeah.
to the person. And as a result, results don't happen often, right? Because people are getting used to a chill management style, and they sometimes will do less. I mean, we all had teachers, and within the first few weeks, you figure out how tough this teacher really is and how much maybe you can get away with. And they're like, oh, they're pretty chill. And at least for me, I would lower some of my energy level in that class because I could get away with it. I'm not here to say that all professionals are like that, but this is a big problem. That kind of leader is not going to go that high into the organization. They might be well liked as a friend, but they're not necessarily leading the way they need to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably as a result of that personality style, they do end up in coaching more often because they probably feel the pain more quickly because they have to give hard feedback and that's painful and they have to hold people accountable and they don't want to. They're conflict avoidant usually.
Yes.
And and so they're much more likely to want to address that because it's not pleasant already.
Yes.
Intrapersonally, it's not pleasant. So I definitely, can understand why, like you even see what is like the top thing that people ask, in webinars and things like that, feedback giving and receiving, managing conflict better, managing difficult personalities. All of this has to do with kind of the same thing, which is like having to be direct and sometimes hold people accountable and have those hard conversations and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not easy. And and it's not like you're one way or the other for your whole career. There's times you may be one way or the other way. Certain scenarios or with certain people might scare you and you're a little scared to talk to them, and other people, you're kind of rough on or whatever. So it's not necessarily you one way or the other way the whole time.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, because different contexts and situations pull out different parts of us. And you're right, we might be really good in one context and really struggle in another, depending on, all of the influence and experiences we're having in that context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's go to number 4.
Well, number 4 is an easy one in one sense. I bet you everyone would raise their hand to say, hey, we need to communicate better. It's
Yes.
very common. Our coaches are working with leaders on communication skills in one way, shape, or form, communicating more effectively. Sometimes it's not communicating enough. Sometimes it's communicating too much. Remember, I got called once for a director level in accounting who would ramble and ramble and ramble and ramble and go on and on and on. And people were like about to kill themselves if they got stuck in a conversation with them. I think we've seen these people. Yeah. It's like, oh no, I see him coming. I'm going across the street. No, it's one of those types of people, right? So he's over communicating and going on tangents. So it's not like there's a logic behind the over communication. They were desperate for us to come in and help him fix that. And that's fixable more or less. I don't know. Sometimes I find with those people that talk too much, I keep trying to show that I'm getting disinterested, and somehow they don't always read it. So,
Yeah.
someone's got to speak up, and that's often our job as a coach, is to give them that feedback and say, hey, let's
Yeah.
take a look at this.
I'm curious, because there are leaders out there that often have to manage people who communicate in lots of different ways. And that is one of the styles that is like the hardest, because it takes over an entire meeting. What would you recommend to a leader trying to give feedback or help or coach up somebody who has this tendency?
One reason why others don't necessarily interrupt or adjust, stop this person. So we're talking about the person talking too much. Is they don't want to be rude, right? They don't want to interrupt or whatnot. And sometimes these people need the awareness. A lot of times they don't. That's often one of the largest pieces of it. They don't realize that. And what's funny is today there's even meeting software that could be on the meeting with you, and it will tell you what % of the time you were speaking. So, there's 10 people in the meeting, you're speaking 60% of the time. That might be a cool. And what? One thing I did is I empowered. First of all, he was not offended if I said, you got to stop. You're going on too long. Bottom line this for me. He was not offended even slightly. So his direct reports had to be trained that they are allowed to time out or interrupt him. And he was fine with that. We even did a session together. I said, okay, we're going to practice this. Okay. And he was totally cool with this. He would not be even slightly offended if he's going on a tangent and people are feeling it, that they can call him on it. And so we actually had them practice doing it so that they could just be the mirror for him. And
I love that.
That worked out okay.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think there's lots of reasons for this. Sometimes people think while they talk and they talk while they think, which, I will call them external processors as compared to internal processors who are more introverted. They think a lot, they think a lot, they think a lot. You have no idea what they're thinking. Maybe they hold on to it. Maybe they never even share it in the meeting, and so just like being able to share with a team that we, have these different ways of thinking and processing. And if you are the kind of person that talks while you think and think while you talk, you might need to write down all of your thoughts and then, condense them, compile them if it's possible. But I also know that some people, they continue to talk when they feel very anxious and they won't stop. And they actually appreciate when they're interrupted. Like, oh, thank God I don't have to carry the conversation anymore. So
That's
I've sort of like learned, over time that there are some people that like just appreciate being interrupted, even though I hate interrupting people.
Yes. And of course, culturally, some cultures are going to interrupt each other more faster and others will not around the world. But, that's why these assessments can be helpful to know your style in these types of ways and for everyone to know each other's style. And so there'll be the person who's really quiet, but always has amazing things to say, but they're not speaking up. We know that about them. So let's make sure we open a door for them to contribute something. And then the person who's going off for too long, let's encourage them to hold on. We'll come back to that. Let's let this person speak up.
Absolutely. And some of that is also learning meeting management, right? Facilitating meetings is something not a lot of leaders just automatically know and pick up, but it is part of, it is an important skill set to be able to, facilitate a conversation where you hear all voices and where you sort of like moderate who's entering, who's exiting the conversation, that kind of thing. All right. We are reaching another ad break. I believe this is our last ad break before the end here. You are listening to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Brian Underhill. And when we come back, you will hear number 5 and number 6 of his 7 great leadership mistakes. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Brian Underhill of CoachSource. We have gone through number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 7 great mistakes that leaders make. So let's move into number 5. What is number 5?
Well, I joke that the world must have gone to some conference I was not at about 20 years ago, where a certain term came to the forefront that I had never heard before, but it's very common today. I'll illustrate that with one HR client called, actually head of sales called and said, "Hey, we have a director of sales, and we need them to have more executive presence."
Yes.
There's the term.
Yes.
Executive presence. And I had to learn more. What does this mean? And so it can mean many things, by the way. In this person's case, the description was he looks and sounds like a truck driver. Now, I don't know if I can even say that today anymore because I don't want to be offensive to folks, but that's what they said to me back then. And so that's how they described executive presence. So they felt like he wasn't the way he looked, the way he spoke, etc. And so, in that case, we had a fantastic coach that did a makeover on him in all ways, shapes, and forms, including taking him to Nordstrom with a personal shopper and getting him all new wardrobe. That's not normally something executive coaches do, but this one did, and really refined how he spoke. And it was one of those, what did you do to him? This is incredible. First time I saw executive presence as a term, and one that repeats all the time throughout the different parts of research we've done over the years. It's often one of the number 2 or number 3 most common areas that companies are asking for. But the term is very broad. It can actually mean lots of things about influence, gravitas, how you look, dress, all kind. It has a lot of subsets to it when that term is used. And it's always important when someone says that to really get a description of what they mean when they say that. What does that mean for this company or this particular leader?
Absolutely. I fully agree. Every time somebody, asks me to help with executive presence, I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that. Tell me more. Because it's now become a catch-all. But, for those of you who have listened to this, I have a pet peeve around requests for executive presence when it comes to women in leadership, because it can be an exceptionally loaded term, especially women of color, marginalized people in leadership roles, because it has a tone of you don't fit in, you're supposed to look and sound a specific way. And so I am really curious. I would love to know, Brian, how do you sort of navigate the sort of assessing what is the organizational culture and messaging, and doing it in a way that supports the individual leader with, still feeling like they could come to work, feeling authentic, being who they are, not feeling like they are being negatively judged simply because of their, gender or race or other background. Like, how do you sort of balance those ideas? I know
Yeah,
that's a
great.
huge
Yeah.
thing I'm just like dropping
Huge
right on you,
question.
but
And one of the funniest definitions of executive presence I heard was, we'll know it when we see it,
yeah,
which is
yes,
dangerous, right? I mean, that's dangerous.
very,
That means you look and talk and whatever, like this ideal that we might have, or like many of the leaders here, which means you may overlook all kinds of other leaders that don't play in that area. So usually in coaching, what we're doing again is we need to figure out, what does this mean for this company? What does it mean for this leader? And yeah, well, there probably has to be a discussion about, is that what this leader wants to do? Honestly, I mean, they think you need to look like this, or act like that. Is that a useful thing to grow in? Maybe they say you need to be a better influencer, and that's a legit thing to learn about as a
yeah,
leader to get better at. And whether it's here or there, any other company, you can benefit by learning that. But yeah, if they say you need to just look a lot like us and act like us and go do the social things we do, or whatever that might be, I don't think that's necessarily appropriate at all. And a leader probably has to decide if they really care to partake in that, if that's not really their thing.
yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it goes to the work that we do around person and environment fit,
Mhm.
and trying to work with both sides, the person, the environment, the people who are providing the feedback, the person who's receiving the feedback. How can we sort of create a thriving environment, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see that we're already coming up close to starting to close out. So number 6, what is number
Yes.
6?
6, and our final one for today, can be very damaging and very tricky and very multi-months, multi-years. So a leader is brought in to make a change happen, or a transition is occurring within the company that a
Yes.
leader is in charge of, or a set of leaders are in charge of. And I've seen this way too often, where a company says, we need to be, I don't know, more aggressive and tougher. You know, a really nice culture, we need to be tougher. So they hire a really tough leader to come and kick some butt and make things happen. And it's organ rejection, right? The medical term, that's
Yes.
really what happens. It's organ rejection. The leader flames out gloriously in about 6 months or so, and the expectations are not met. More dead bodies, et cetera, et cetera. So leading change, leading transition, and doing it well, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of help, a lot of emotional intelligence, etc. You gotta have to kind of, they always say culture eats strategy for lunch. I forgot who said that. Maybe some people say Peter Drucker. That's what happens. You come in and you're trying to do something and you're not able to read how to make it happen and how to get it done. It's not going to work, and it's going to go badly, very badly.
Absolutely, 100%. You know, change management is one of those things that is not taken into consideration, giving some time for the leader to understand the culture and how resistant, people will be to such a, drastic change being requested, and, how long change actually happens, how long it takes, compared to what you think it'll take,
Mhm.
and hitting the ground running, blowtorch in hand, is not always the best
Yeah.
mechanism for action. So,
Yeah.
Brian, out of all the things that we talked about, what's one takeaway maybe that you'd like people to walk off with from today?
Yeah, I think the most important point is that all of these are avoidable and fixable if someone wants to make change. And part of needing to make the change means needing to have that awareness, number one, that self-awareness of kind of, where are you at with all of this right now? And do you have any of these things creeping up that have to be addressed? So I strongly recommend that, having your finger on the pulse on some regular basis of how things are going and how you're doing in all of these areas. And if improvements are needed, to go get help right away, and it could be fixed, it could be improved. and one can have a fantastic career. And, you know, it's been said that everyone benefits when a leader gets better. So even getting better by 5% has incredible benefits well beyond that individual leader, which is why we believe, you know, coaching is so valuable for as something for a leader to use to improve that
Absolutely.
it has great impact.
It's a ripple effect. And if you want to find out more about CoachSource, you can go to cs.coachsource.com to learn more. If those of you who are watching right now, you can see I'm showing the front page of it. It's fantastic information. And in addition, like I mentioned, Brian has this book, okay, Coach Me. It is a personal board of directors in that it's got so many of the biggest well-known executive coaches sharing their perspectives in like short clips. I mean, like 2 to 3 pages per person. I've already got it all tagged up with all kinds of frameworks and things that I loved from this book. So look it up. What did you take away, audience, from today? More importantly, what's one small change out of the 7 that you can implement this week based on what you learned from Brian? Share it with us on LinkedIn. You can also find this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Apple, Spotify, Amazon podcasts, all over the place. Share with others, with colleagues, leave a review if it resonated for you. And thank you to Talk Radio NYC for hosting. Together, we will navigate the complexities of leadership and emerge stronger on the other side. Thank you for joining me and Brian Underhill today on this journey. This is Dr. Mira Brancu signing off. Until next time, stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills. Thanks, everybody. Take care.